So today we're going to be talking about intervals, and we're going to be talking more about different types of qualities of intervals. So remember, last time we talked about generic versus specific intervals. Generic intervals are determined solely by staff position, and specific intervals are determined not only by staff position, but also the amount of half steps on the keyboard between the two pitches. We talked about perfect, major, and minor intervals. Specifically, we talked about major, minor, seconds, and thirds last time. And we talked about like how many semitones it takes from middle C to make a minor second. So, one half step above the root makes a second, a minor second. Two to get to a major second. Three to get to a minor third. And four to get to a major third. Well, now we're going to be talking about augmented and diminished intervals. So an augmented interval is always going to be one half step more than a perfect interval. So, for example, an example of a perfect interval is a perfect fourth. So we'll just draw a little sketchamaroo. So, let's look at middle C. Middle C, a perfect fourth from middle C is an F natural. And here's what it sounds like. That is a perfect fourth. So to make that augmented is to sharpen that F by one semitone, turning it into an F sharp. And this is what it's going to sound like. That's also called a tritone when a perfect fourth is sharpened. It's also called like the devil's interval. Early sacred music, they would avoid augmented fourths because they believed it to kind of evoke not the right kind of spirits, and it does sound kind of spooky. So I'll give them that. Now, diminished intervals have one less half step than a perfect interval. So one less half step than perfect interval. Comme ça. And look at an example. So a very common diminished interval that you'll see is a diminished fifth. So first, let's create a generic fifth. So generic fifth from middle C is a G. This is what it sounds like. Perfect and generic fifth. So in order to make this a diminished fifth, we have to lower it, flatten it by one semitone. Flatten that G. Now it's a G flat. Now something to pay mind of, and you probably, if you got a good ear, you probably noticed it just now. An augmented fourth is the exact same in this context as a diminished fifth. So augmented fourth, that's do to fi, not do to fa, and a diminished fifth is do to say, not do to sol. Do, fi, do, So a perfect fourth, do, fa. Augmented fourth, do, fi. A perfect fifth, do, sol. An augmented, or sorry, a diminished fifth, do, si. So depending on the harmonic context, an augmented fourth and a diminished fifth are the exact same. Let's move on to today's intervals. Today we're going to be going over perfect fourths and perfect fifths, and then we'll retouch on augmented and diminished stuff. So, fourths. So, moving into specifics of the interval of the fourth. I'm just gonna write this down. There we go. Put my treble clef there. All right. So, a perfect fourth, written as P4, is a generic fourth on the staff, and it's made up of 5 half steps. So let's remember it's C to F, C, F, and let's count our half steps. Remember, there are going to be 5 half steps or 5 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be do to fa. And, just touching back on the augmented fourth, I'll show you how we write that out. It's going to be aug 4. It is, again, a generic fourth. And remember, whenever we augment any interval, we just raise it or increase it by a semitone. So it's going to be 6 half steps. Oops, let's stay consistent. 6 half steps or 6 semitones. So writing that out. Generic fourth, up, but we raise it, sharpened, haha. There we are. Let's count our half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that in solfege is do to fi. Do, fi. So again, the difference, perfect fourth versus augmented fourth. They are both generic fourths, boom, 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 boom. But the difference is the amount of half steps. Perfect fourth, 5 half steps. Augmented fourth, you tack another half step on there, 6 half steps. Do, fa, do, fi. Now, let's move on to fifths. Let's keep C as our root. Bring it over here too. Remember, fifths are also perfect, unless noted otherwise. So P5, a perfect fifth is a generic fifth on the staff. There we go. And it is made up of 7 half steps or 7 semitones. Let's count our half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like the Star Wars theme. That's how I remember what a fifth sounds like. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-da. Yeah, you get it. And in solfege, that's do to sol. Some people say so, do to so, but I have learned it to be do to sol. Yeah. So yeah, do, sol. That's a perfect fifth, a generic fifth on the staff, 7 half steps. Now, the other type of fifth we have is, as stated previously, the diminished fifth. And that is a lowercase d and then 5. D5. That's how I learned to write my diminished fifths. So it's again a generic fifth, boom, but it is a diminished interval, which means that it'll be one less semitone from the perfect interval. So instead of 7 half steps, it's going to be 6 half steps or 6 semitones. So I'm going to flatten that. There we go. Here we are. Let's count our half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, remember, in this context, the diminished fifth is the same as the augmented fourth. So because it's a diminished fifth, it's not do, fi. Remember, it's do, say. Here's sol, say. So you can't call a diminished fifth do, fi. It has to be do, say. Otherwise you're wrong. So yeah. Do, sol, do, say. And those are your fourths and your fifths. Oh, I didn't use There we go. I hope this helped. Please let me know if you have any questions.